That's my presentation. So Scotty just gave my presentation actually. No, it's actually very, very true. And so I'm going to talk to you about Grow Cycling Foundation and talk to you about my background, because I think those two things are very linked. Obviously. This is me. This is me and my family on the left side. My dad's behind the camera. I love this picture on the left because it's kind of highlights all of our personalities so much. Like me and my mom are like looking at the camera, being like, oh, there's a camera out. My brother doesn't care at all. He's trying to light something on fire. And and my dad is like, yeah, I'll take the picture. Like I'm going to be behind the scenes. And so that was us. I grew up in Oklahoma. I moved to California around 12 or 13. And it was when my mom started an investment bank. So she started an investment bank from the kitchen table that's right next to this picture as a stay-at-home mom. And she, at the time in the early 2000s, was one of 3 women to own an investment bank in the US. And so we moved out to California. And also at the time on the right here, we rode motocross. We rode motocross a lot. And I was pretty much a professional athlete. As a kid, we would ride 6 days a week, and that's everything I did. Actually didn't go to school. Finish that up later. But we were on the first factory amateur team for Kawasaki. So if you know motocross, we were on the same team as Ryan Villapoto and people like that. This was me being really unimpressed about winning a championship. And I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to go and drive my RC car or something. And in parallel, I rode bikes. So I was in the backyard building jumps, inviting the neighborhood kids over, and they would get hurt because they were too big, but that was okay. They would go home. And that was kind of my life. I rode motocross and I rode dirt jumps on my BMX bike. And it wasn't until this very serendipitous moment that I was down at my dirt jumps that a mountain biker happened to come down. We made friends with him. We would make fun of him because mountain biking wasn't cool. And he said, we should go up to Whistler. I think you'd really, really like it. And I went up there, fell in love with it. And he also happened to be into World Cup racing. And so he showed me all these videos, the old Earth videos. There's this video 3 Focus that the Parkins did that it was just, I wore the tape out. And I wanted to do that so much. And so this is me at Val di Sole in 2010 at my first World Cup. That year was this, I went from Cat 1 to racing a World Cup at the end of the year because I didn't know any better. I didn't know that you weren't supposed to do that. So it was just me and my mom traveling around, trying to get our points. The reason I look like this is because I was super shy and I was one of the only Americans to qualify that year, and nobody knew who I was because I hadn't been racing. I just was there with my mom, flipped my bike over in the, behind the Specialized rig. I think I brought a multi-tool. The thing I say is like people said, oh, it rained, you need to get spiked tires. And I was like, cool, you guys like put metal spikes in your tires for riding down a hill? I don't know how to do that, but they're like, no, they're spikes, like we just call them that. So that was kind of my foray into downhill. And I think that like serendipitous moment is really, really important and is kind of instructive for what I'm going to talk about. So then I went and raced World Cups for a long time. I'm super proud of the career I had. It was really amazing. I got a bunch of top 20s, a top 10, a bunch of podiums at Crankworks, and did a lot of video and photo stuff that I think was really amazing for its time. And I think one of the things that sport and World Cup racing and being a professional athlete kind of taught me about myself was this kind of pursuing the sense of mastery. So anything that I do I remember when I got on the podium at Crankworks, I was like, man, I kind of feel similar to what I did yesterday. And this is supposed to be like the moment. And I realized that it was kind of that journey to that. So now everything I do, like that is what is the most fulfilling to me. How can I do it the best that I can and really try my best. And so this is me now. This was actually at Innsbruck. And I think one of the things about this picture is I would have never imagined myself as that kid growing up in Oklahoma that I could be traveling the world, riding my bike, doing what I love, with all of my friends, just having fun, and that could be a job. I would have never imagined. This was actually the first year on Santa Cruz, so this was 2021. Also never thought I would be riding a Santa Cruz, and I'll kind of get to that. And I think the other thing was that I was really sad that I was riding a Santa Cruz after I stopped racing, because the bike was so good, and I was like, I probably could have won if I had this thing when I was racing. This picture is totally unrelated to anything, but it's like one of my favorite pictures of all time. So I just put it in here. My friend Heather took this photo a year or so ago for a Thule coffee table book. She's an amazing photographer and unrelated.
Where is it?
It's in San Diego at Black's Beach. Yeah, but for no reason. So my life now, I kind of bucket it into there's three different buckets. And bucket one, in no order of importance, bucket one is commentary and broadcasting and presenting. And so this is me and Rob Warner. If you don't know who Rob Warner is, he's Rob Warner. And this was us commentating the World Championships this year in Leger. And what an amazing experience to have, to race these World Cups and then be able to commentate the biggest event ever. It's especially in terms of people on the site at the time. And this picture is super funny because we were in the middle of commentary, and so I'm looking at the screen. I was freaking out. Finn Martin barges in, as he does, and was like, hey, tapping on the shoulder and like being like, whatever. And I was like, Sven, like, what are you doing? And so Rob looks like he's like having a good time, but he's really saying like, what are you doing here? And why are you here? But I'm really glad that he took this photo, because this is one of the most special moments I've ever had. Rewind a week, and this is me as a professional athlete taking some photos for the new Tallboy launch this year. I got to work with Seb. He was one of the worst boss I've ever had on a shoot, but that's okay. No, I'm just kidding. He was like second worst. But I think
No more about that.
no, I'm just kidding. It was actually amazing. And so I think for me, the transition from being a professional athlete like a World Cup racer to whatever kind of athlete I am now is the transition from competition to storytelling. And so how can I tell stories through the bike, communicating, personality, really trying to humanize things, trying to humanize cycling, trying to humanize brands. And so I think that that's kind of what I do as a professional athlete now. So it's a lot of photos and videos and things like that. That's bucket two. This is bucket three. I love this photo more than anything. And I'll talk more about what growth cycling is in a second, but I wanted to highlight something that all of us have talked about this week, which is relationships. And like I said, I wasn't joking when I said Scotty stole my presentation, but the relationship with Santa Cruz started a decade ago. And so we talk a lot about like, how do we get diversity in, how do we make things inclusive and things like that. But for me, it was the relationship. The reason I am here and the reason I do things with Santa Cruz is because we've been friends for 10 years. They've been through everything with me. When I started a website, a data acquisition website for the World Cups, the Santa Cruz Syndicate was the only team that sponsored me on Patreon for that, even though all the teams used it every day. And even knowing Joe, I met Joe at Jordy's house, and I thought he was just kind of a random guy that I would see at Jordy's house when I would go over there and drink beer. And later I found out he's the CEO. That's okay. And even as we kind of fast forward, it didn't ever make sense for me to be on the syndicate racing. And as my life progressed, now I am a different person. And I think that relationship with Santa Cruz allowed me to be involved. And so you think about these three buckets, and you think about Santa Cruz being able to know me and say, you know what, actually, I do believe that Eliot can be a communicator, and that's valuable to us. Oh, I do actually think it's really valuable for Eliot to be a professional athlete and an ambassador for our brand because he is a storyteller and he's great on the bike. And oh yeah, for sure he can run a business and make change and do all of these things. But it was only that relationship that allowed them to expand their idea of me, that I wasn't just this athlete that was a World Cup racer. The other thing I love about this picture is my mom. One of the things that's been the most fulfilling to me about this is that I've gotten to work with my mom, this amazing businesswoman, one of the smartest people I've ever met, and the most ambitious, and I think everyone in this room that has talked to her would say that she has just an amazing ambition. And this picture is me, I feel like saying, man, can you believe we're on the homepage of Santa Cruz right now? Like, would you have ever imagined that? And it's her saying, where else would we be? Of course we're on the homepage of Santa Cruz. So what is growth cycling and what do we do? We started in 2020. I think what Anila said was really instructive to my experience as well, where I did have all of these relationships. And I think the video that Scotty was talking about was really a recognition of like, okay, this is my reality. And like, I didn't realize we were so far off. Like when people started talking about it, I was like, oh, like I thought we were on the same page here. And so it was me kind of, I think, getting frustrated in the moment and saying like, we're off here. And again, Scotty, see my presentation, I started to say, well, what does that mean to fix this? What does that mean to start something? It was a moment where I said, okay, I can actually do something here. This is something that I'm passionate about. It's really interesting to me. I have all of this access to companies, to their relationships in cycling, and I have a different perspective. And so I think that is allows me to do some things and tackle some kind of low-hanging fruit. And so we said, our mission is to promote education, access, and opportunities that increase diversity and inclusion in cycling. And it's been great. it's been really, really good. That was when we started in 2020. And if that is who we are, what do we do? And so as we started thinking about this problem, it is more than just access. It is more than just bikes. It is more than a lot of things. And I think we kind of think about it as these four different pieces, but it's not just these four different pieces in isolation, because a lot of the time you'll have access, but without community or education, like the access doesn't mean anything. I'm not just going to go drive 10 hours to go to a ski hill, or even if there's, I live 20 minutes from the beach and I never go there, right? I have more access than most people. And so it's really about, you'll see I love flywheels, but this pathway, creating this pathway where once you have community, you get more opportunities. And so like being here and understanding and being able to talk to everyone in this room, there are so many opportunities that I wouldn't have had otherwise, which leads me to education. I can actually execute on those opportunities, which leads to more access. I can get a job, I can do things, which leads to a larger community because I've had jobs and all of these different things. And so here, I wanted to talk about this little piece. And so this, here we've been talking a lot about access. And I think one of the things that we focus on a lot for access is, in relationship to what we've been talking about, is really like, what is the entry point to the access? And then why do you retain in the access? It's not, again, like not just about building the pump track or building the trails for what we're doing. It's about saying, how can we get people engaged in those trails, in this community? And then once they try it, why do they stay there, right? If I go and I have a bad experience, then like, I have so many better things to do with my life than have a bad experience on a bike on some trails. So as we talk about this, I'm going to go over those three different points, but I think this is something that I think about a lot when I'm trying to tackle these problems. And there are these steps, and I think that I'll kind of go through them. So the first one, as we're trying to tackle these things. It's kind of so we say, how do we empower communities with the tools they need? And this for us can be school programs, places to ride. I think this is definitely relevant to what Anilo's talking about in community and safety and things like that, which allows them to make the bike their own, which attracts more people from that community. And this kind of can circle around as well, and which inspires a movement, which then can expand the minds of people to accept these communities as cyclists, which then increases investment and allows us to empower communities with more tools and more things. And so I'll give 2 or 3 examples of this. I don't know if you guys are familiar with all the kids from like New York and Baltimore who do wheelies down the street in the neighborhoods. So in this situation, the first step was they need bikes. That was their tool to do this thing, which allows them to make the bike their own. And so they're riding the bike in a way that none of us would have thought of before, right? I probably wasn't thinking about riding down the street, getting super sketchy on my back wheel, about to flip over backwards. And so it was this new way to ride, which attracts more people from that community. And so I say, man, Scotty is doing crazy wheelies. This is insane. I want to be like him. And it makes it cool, right? Like this is that cultural relevance. So that spins, which inspires a movement. And so the reason we've all heard of this is because it created a movement. It went viral on social media. It was in all of these national magazines, which then expanded the minds to accept these people as cyclists. And so if you were to see a kid doing a wheelie down the street, you'd be like, man, what is this kid doing? All of these things. But now we think of that as a category of cycling, right? Like that is a valid thing to do on a bicycle, which then increases investment. And so we can say, great, there's kids who have sponsorships now. There are kids who have who are influencers now. There are kids who have gotten all of these opportunities because of the way that they ride the bike. And I think another category that this happens a lot is in sport. And so, an example would be like Tiger Woods in golf. And so the tools that he needed were a coach, he needed clubs, and all of these things, which then allowed him to make them his own. So he was playing golf in ways that nobody would have thought of. You remember the Nike commercial, him bouncing the ball and making these putts and making these shots that no one had ever thought about. And the community that he started was all of the people that supported him along the way. The country clubs that used to turn Black people away said, hey man, this kid is good. We want to support him, which then inspires a movement. I would have never thought about golf before Tiger Woods. My mom never thought about golf before Tiger Woods, but he created this larger than life thing and this inspiration because he was who he was, which then expanded the minds of the rest of the community for people to say, maybe Black people can play golf. They're pretty good at it. And it's only then, right? People talk a lot about acceptance, but I think as we see from this, it's actually flipped, right? The acceptance comes last. It comes after all of this really hard work that we do. So for us, what is our entry point to the access? And we thought a lot about what this means. I think it was who has the most trust in the community? And for us, it was schools. So we said, if we can get all of the Inglewood school districts, all of the Inglewood Unified School District schools to have cycling programs, that's great, right? We can do a ton of good with that. And so we went there, we were like, okay, we need some partners. So we got All Kids Bike, which is the Strider program, and also Outride, which does middle schools. And we went there and we were like, cool, like got the money, let's put a cycling program in. And this quote was from a principal. She said, why would you teach children to ride a bike in this community where it's not safe for them to cycle? And so we think of bikes as this positive thing. And for this principal, she said, not only is it not a positive thing, it's actually a negative thing, right? Where are they going to ride? There's no access here. There's no bike lanes here. If they go on into the park, there's a no bike sign. And so they get pulled over by the police. Like, this is actually a net negative for my community. And so I think this is an unintuitive thing where we really have to, with all of these things, it's really about listening really deeply and then trying to start kind of from first principles, because this is an unintuitive fact. And so the way that we said that, is like, okay, it's not about access. We said, these are actually problems that we can solve here. So we can build a pump track that is safe. We can talk to the city council about taking those no biking signs down. And when we got the teachers on the bikes. We actually held a little party for them. So we had food and, some music and like all of these things to kind of get them involved, because they didn't want to even have this in the school. They got on the bikes and they loved it, right? They were riding around the field with their friends and all of these different things. And so I think starting from this, so much of the time we think of the problem as our problem. So if I was in this teacher's position, the problem for me would be that I didn't have bikes, but that's not the problem at all for them. So we really have to start from first principles. And then the access point. So we said Inglewood is really important because it is 95% non-white. This pump track will be the only pump track in Los Angeles. You kind of think about the surrounding area, and it takes a long time to get to anywhere where it would be interesting to ride. And so in that case, of course, I'm not going to start riding, right? Like, I'm not going to travel so far just to try this thing out. And I think that is a little bit of a shift from what we think of, right? We think of, man, if this stuff was just close, if I just had a bike, like, it would be easy. And so I think it was really interesting to hear Greg and also Matt yesterday talk about the needs of different communities. And so Greg talked a lot about economic development for the communities that he's going into. Matt actually talked a lot about what it meant for them to get community support. And so pitching a community here, right? Like, maybe the pitch is that it's really fun. We actually need more capacity because there are so many cyclists. And you saw that by the support that Matt was able to galvanize to say, man, we came in huge numbers to this community, to this city council meeting. And that is the opposite pitch that we had to make. So what are the things that Inglewood is looking for? This is a really aspirational community. They held the Super Bowl this past year. And they said, yeah, like, why is this interesting? The things that we're competing against are a baseball diamond. So this quote is from the mayor of Inglewood. Why would we put in a pump track or a bike park instead of a baseball diamond that the Dodgers are wanting to put in here? Why would we put in a basketball court that the Clippers want to put in here? And so for us, we said, okay, you guys are aspirational. We can hold the pump track world championships here. We can have this amazing event here. We can do this thing that uplifts the community. It was about health. And so you think about the community and the attendance rates of schools, the health of the constituents. Cycling is one of the sports that has the greatest health benefits in the world. And so we can talk about that. And then we can also talk about safety. I mentioned no bike lanes. There are people who get hit on cars, pulled over by the police, like I said, all of these different things. And so we said, we're going to put everything in this public park that is safe, that has security. And so we can hit all of these different things from a community. And so for me, again, it's not so much that this is a completely different approach that we would take, but I feel like a lot of times we forget what we know in real life when we're thinking about increasing diversity and inclusion. And so this is really normal. It's really practical, right? When we're going and talking to a new group of people, we have to understand what they want. And so the last one is aspiration. And so this quote is from a kid that we talked to in Inglewood. And I was like, yeah, have you ever heard, do you ride a bike? And he's like, yeah, I ride a bike. Do you know what mountain biking is? Yeah, I know what mountain biking is. Would you ever want a mountain bike? Oh, no. Those dudes jump off cliffs. That's like totally a white person sport. And so we kind of think about, and I think it's funny because my brother and I thought of it as the same thing, right? When I was saying that the dude would come down to, my friend Christian would come down to the dirt jumps, and we were like, man, those dudes just jump off cliffs and they don't really get hurt. I'm not really sure why that's interesting, but cool, man. And so this is, why do you retain? And what opportunities are available to you? And so if you think that that is all mountain biking is or cycling is, then it's probably not interesting. But if you say, man, I could be an artist here. I can design clothes. I can be a musician. I can be an Olympian through the bicycle. I can just connect with other people on a Sunday through the bicycle. And so there are all of these things that are available to you through the bike. And this is how you activate the access. It's not just enough for us to put it there. We have to say, we just put this pump track here. It's in LA. From what we know, it'll probably get around 200 to 250,000 people going there every year. But those are existing cyclists. So how do we get the community that hasn't been part of that group there? And it's really about activating the access in a way, expanding the culture of what cycling is, getting a local DJ there, getting the barbecue joint there, so that when people come there, they can say, this is cool. Oh, and there's also a bike. And you start to connect those two things. I think the best example of that is like streetwear, which is the combination of skateboarding and high fashion. And so what progress have we made? Our entry points, we have 7 of 20 schools done in our first 2 years. So that's a couple thousand kids riding bikes in schools, a lot of the schools that got their PE programs cut. Our access point, we've broken ground on this over $1 million pump track. And so 2020 and 2021 was me sitting on Zooms, raising way too much money and doing way too much pitching. And our aspiration, we've partnered with UCLA to do a lot of data collection on what it means to have a successful cycling program or a dedicated cycling space. What does it mean to create an ecosystem? And also, it comes from both sides. Now the students in UCLA know that they can go into cycling. The data scientist says, oh, I can be a data scientist in cycling. And that wasn't something they were thinking about before. We also have a jobs board. It's thousands of views every month, where people have found jobs because, again, I need to know about the opportunities that I have in the world of cycling. That's it.